Someone wanted me to watch a video. It's like an Alhaitham video.
I think one of my favorite things about this supposedly feeble Chad is how cheap he is. Not just cheap to get going, but to really get going. Alhaitham is an extremely strong carry who can dish out insane numbers even on a
The craziest thing here was, I'm pretty sure the Hyperbloom number was higher. There should be like a 30k Hyperbloom somewhere. Hyperbloom mod check? Where is the Hyperbloom? Oh, it's there, 33. Yeah, the Hyperbloom numbers are bigger. Oh no. That's the Hyperbloom right there. And then this is his damage. He's a good driver though. Why do people think he's strong? Because he had the highest, I think he had that like the highest spreadsheet numbers when the game first came out. So it's not because of that, but if you think about it, like it's like a chain, right? High numbers, then the theory crafting says that is strong, but then the casual videos say that they don't use sheets or anything, but then they'll say the theory crafting says that character's strong, and then the casual players watching those videos then say, oh, this is a strong team, and then the casual players who don't watch the videos, they look at the teams that everyone else is playing, and then because everyone else is playing that, is he still sheet higher? I'm not sure. I mean, the craziest thing is that in Alhaitham's sheet, if you replace him with like Fischl, the numbers are on the sheet are basically the same for Hyperbloom stuff. So I don't even know if he's technically the highest cheating Hyperbloom character. Because the thing is, you can't really look at the sim, because the sim, it depends on how many of them are optimized or how well they're optimized. So you have to you can't take this at face value. So this is the Hyperbloom core, and now there's Kole, Furina, Alhaitham, but this one might be a lot more optimized. So there's a random delays one which is 71k, and then there's like a super optimized one which is 74k, but then again there's like this Fischl one has 77k, but this is crazily optimized as well, because you see there's Deepwood Xingqiu here and Instructor Nahida. So no one's actually running this. This is very optimized, but you can see here that even this one's higher than the Alhaitham one, and this is quick swap friendly as well, so you're not like tied to playing an on-field character either. Yeah, there's another Fischl one. So this one's with Deepwood Nahida and then Emblem Xingqiu, 73k. You can scam. You can basically the scam things in calcs are like Hyperbloom stuff, Hyperbloom in general, also Fischl in general, sometimes Nahida in general as well, because sometimes people in calcs they do like insane combos on Nahida, like some charge attack combos that no one really does. Maybe Furina in general as well. Maybe quicken and spread in general as well, kind of. But I mean, yeah, I mean theoretically he's not even like really an upgrade. I mean this one here is like super optimized, 74k, but then there was a super optimized one with Fischl that was also around that as well. And the thing about Alhaitham as well is that he doesn't really have hyper carry scaling or vertical investment, because at the end of the day his vertical investment is C2 Nahida, and if you're playing this team, the vertical investment here is also C2 Nahida. So either way you're getting C2 Nahida. It's just that if you're playing Fischl, you just skip a few steps.
star weapon like Harbinger of Dawn. It is literally on par with Mistsplitter's performance. Listen, I get it. HOD does require you to be above 90% HP in order for its passive to activate. The main point I want to make...
Obviously, you can't make fun of gameplay. I'm not making fun of anyone's gameplay, because that's kind of cringe. But it is funny to be talking about Harbinger of Dawn, and then he's like 40% HP there. But I mean, I would expect most people to be dying here anyway, so it's not their fault, but that's just the fault of the weapon. It's an unrealistic weapon. It depends on the team, because if you're like, these probably have different distributions, so I wouldn't even say you could use it to checking those things, because if you go here, 30, 61, 9, 25, 63, 11. So these are all optimized differently, but you're still getting different results here, because like you can optimize exactly when Fischl is hitting and exactly when Nahida is applying dendro. But from my experience, I would also say don't use the sim to check team DPS, but I would say it's good for checking weapons, and that's always been true. The best reason to do like team counts has never been to actually look at the DPS. The best use has been to check like different gear options.
Point I want to make here is how you can put in so little and get so much out. Incredible for a DPS unit to have. Not to mention that you don't have to put a lot of artifact investment into him to hit the ground running with flicker.
But is he really a DPS at that point? I don't know. The thing with this is like it's different sorts of praises. So you can say he's good, but sometimes it's like Hyperbloom is good, and sometimes it's Alhaitham is good. And I think it's easy to mix them up, because if you look at these, right, I'm pretty sure Hyperbloom is carrying both of these teams. So Alhaitham's damage here is 30% of the team's damage. Here is 32. So Hyperbloom is doing, or Shinobu is doing 50%, 50%, and then with Fischl, she's doing 39%. So if anything, Shinobu's damage goes down. So you actually do get more raw damage without him, surely. Furina. The problem is with those ones is then you're getting into scamming. Like, so if you thought that the Harbinger Dawn that was there was kind of bad, imagine Harbinger Dawn with Furina. I mean, and also, like I said, Furina in general is like Furina teams always will have slightly more inflated DPS. Any Furina team. For casual players, they would play better with the Xingqiu, and then for tryhard players, I mean, a lot of people aren't even getting that like 20% faster clears with Furina anyway. So you could back chest Xingqiu for Hyperbloom in for both people, really, because the casual player is really playing Furina Shinobu stuff with no interrupt resist, no healing. No, but this one has random delays and it's not that much weaker. This one's random, they're saying, so it's you're only losing 3k damage, whereas I'm pretty sure this one here is inflated. It's just the general Furina inflation. You're telling me adding Furina to the team is like 20k more DPS? I mean, obviously, if you want to play Alhaitham, then you should be playing Alhaitham. But if you're talking about like meta or damage wise, like you are better off getting Nahida here instead. So obviously, if you wanna play Alhaitham, you should, because you should always pull who you like. But I mean, the point I'm making is that this topic is about him being super strong and super free to play friendly and stuff like that. But really, it's Nahida and Hyperbloom. And I think a lot of the arguments here are more about Hyperbloom and Nahida than Alhaitham. So I do have to disagree with this whole first section.
Something like this. But you can absolutely skyrocket his damage with his other teammates. Nahida in that flex slot is already an amazing Alhaitham increase, especially since then Alhaitham doesn't have to hold Deepwood.
The uptime is very sus. The other problem is, like, without Nahida, your Deepwood uptime is always sus, basically every team.
Also, weapons on your teammates can be cheap. Craftable on Kuki, Favonius on Shinobu.
But this is still Hyperbloom though.
Pretty much whatever.
Yeah, I don't recommend riding for Hyperbloom stuff. Especially these days, there's a lot of harder enemies, so she's not even like much of a damage increase over Shinobu. But then you add no healing on top of that. These days, no one's doing that. You're just gonna die. So he's a character that makes Hyperbloom harder to play. He makes it require more investment because he actually scales off of artifacts. He's also a 5-star instead of a different 4-star, and Nahida instead. The triple EM's for Nahida, it's not for Alhaitham. Then expensive. I mean, you could probably make the argument that any like hyper carry character requires a lot of artifact farming. When the last time Shinobu was a banner? Shinobu was on a banner 4.2 with Ayato and Sino. I mean, I personally find Hyperbloom kind of scuffed unless you start playing like around the time Nahida and Shinobu are on banners. So I kind of agree with that. Like if you're a new player and you start playing like when a Nahida banner is running and when Shinobu is running, like maybe, yeah, like this banner here, 3.6. If you started playing there, then yeah, Hyperbloom teams are probably going to be good for you. But I mean, the general recommendations of Hyperbloom teams, like if you're having to play like Dendro main character, Lisa or whatever, maybe a Xiao, then they're kind of scuffed. Honestly, you can make an argument that any character is expensive. There's always an argument to make for any character being expensive, because expensive is so vague. Like if you can talk about like teammates, you can talk about weapons, you can talk about artifact investment.
He's had a very good run in terms of shelf life so far. This guy released back in 3.4 and is still one of the finest premier DPS units that you can pull for. He has lasted over a year now, and I believe that if you pull him on his rerun, he won't get power crept for at least another year. And if he does, then he will still be a good unit, because that new unit would have to be obscenely broken in order to eclipse Alhaitham enough to make pulling for an upgrade worth it at all. Nilou, Bountiful Cores, Bloom with Alhaitham aren't going to be as strong as the legendary Quick Bloom team. But hey,
if you know, you know. Nilou, Alhaitham, Bloom. Does the C6 do anything that relevant? Not really. His constellations are just not good.
Also, artifacts. I did say we would come back to this double-edged sword later. Oh hey look, the sword evolved. And that at middle investment levels, he does great. But the more you invest in his substats, the more useless they start to become. This is because Alhaitham's contributions in his own team aren't actually that high.
Okay, I don't want to be too harsh, but this seems a bit contradicting. The weaknesses seem a bit contradicting to like a lot of the video. So one of the things earlier on in the video was how like he's like a good option to boost your Hyperbloom team, but then they're saying that he kind of falls off after a while. Then it was how C2 Nahida is actually his best like vertical investment thing, and then now the damage he does in a team and how he's one of the strongest DPSs, and then now they're saying actually in these teams he doesn't do a lot of DPS. And this also uses Yelan. So as we saw, if you use like Xingqiu, it's like it was like 30% or something. Yeah, I don't want to be too harsh, but it does seem contradicting.
He's literally him, the man. Even with this being his third time on banners, if you haven't got him and wanted a taste of what it feels like to play a high-end, top-tier DPS, this guy is an amazing choice, and I cannot recommend him.
I mean, yeah, again, I don't want to nitpick, but they kind of said that he wasn't a high-end, and he also doesn't do that much DPS. C2 Furina, C2 Nahida. Yeah, I know Joakob's in our Discord community. So they're good at the game. So if this is like the best runs that they could get, then these are good runs for him. But yeah, even with all that vertical investment, he's still never gonna be good at speedrunning. It is what it is. But then that is relevant for, even if you're a casual player, that is still important to know that you don't really get too much out of Omega investing into him. He's not really much better. I mean, you could argue he's not better at all. Not even double hydro, but with Fischl, you could argue that he's not even better at all. I mean, I don't want to be too harsh because he's still good. It's the main thing is that people say he's like one of the best DPSs in the game, so that's going too far. But yeah, when people say he's like above average, or not even above average, I mean, a lot of people say he's like the one of the best, which is like all the way up here. Whereas I would say he's just average. With everyone, with most of the other DPSs, average. And then if you're like into speedrunning, which a lot of people aren't, but if you are into speedrunning, he's like a bit below average. He's a very high floor. I mean, the thing is, he doesn't really though. It's like it's the Hyperbloom that has the high floor, because if you do like Alhaitham spread, does that really have a high floor? It's a lot harder to play, and it's a lot more like, it takes a lot more skill and more investment. I just think overall in this video, like the main thing is that a lot of the pros are more about like Hyperbloom pros and Nahida pros than actual Alhaitham pros. Yeah, I mean, this is the meme, right? This is a lot of the meme. When people say he's like in the top 3 DPSs. Okay, there's also the Jello video. I don't think there is a top 3 DPS. I think the only thing that matters is Neuvillette is number 1. Anything else, no one really cares. And then everything else, it just depends on how you play the game, and then your own personal biases, your interests, your level of investment. Doesn't matter.
Alhaitham is one of the best DPS in the entire game, and in this video we're going to talk about why that is, how you best should build him, and what teams will make him shine. Alhaitham's constellations are not generally advised. I don't personally use any constellations. All my 5 stars are C0, so you know he's one of the best DPS at C0. I think that's one of his biggest strengths, is that at C0 he's one of the best DPSs. You don't need to get a bunch of constellations to unlock his power. He's very free to play friendly at C0. You don't need to feel pressured for his constellations. That's one of his pros, I think. But he does have those.
The thing with this, so I always thought that this was like a paradox. So if a character has bad constellations and a bad weapon, then they're seen as being free to play friendly. But if that same character was so if Alhaitham was exactly the same as he was now, but he just had a good C1, does that all of a sudden make him not free to play friendly? So if C0 Neuvillette was the exact same character, but you just remove his C1, is he not still exactly the same character at C0? So if you're a C0 player, why does it matter how good their constellations are? Because they're the exact same character at C0, and you're not going to pull constellations anyway. It shouldn't make a difference. And regardless of how good or bad it is, it doesn't change how good they are at C0. So you can feel optimal at C0.
As soon as you get C1 or C2 Furina and C2 Nahida, you've essentially got a whale team. Like it's just not even, you're just going to be destroying the abyss so much. It's not even...
Wasn't that the Joakob video? C2 Nahida, C2 Furina. I would definitely not recommend people vertically invest in Alhaitham Hyperbloom if they're looking for insane damage. Obviously, if you're an Alhaitham main and you just want to vertically invest in, that's fine. But I wouldn't do it under the context of trying to get some insane damage.
But you don't have to use Furina. You can use Yelan as well. Yelan does a lot of personal damage. This team is very comparable to the others, especially in single target, where Yelan is actually hitting all the enemies with her arrows. It's an AoE that Furina tends to pull out.
Furina is also single target. Without kazuha, is Furina really AoE? I mean, if there's any Alhaitham mains in chat, I think most Alhaitham mains I know prefer Yelan over Furina. I don't know if we scared the Alhaitham mains away by talking shit about him, but hopefully we didn't. So I don't actually know too many Alhaitham mains who prefer Furina, even though she like theoretically is like 20% more DPS or whatever. Oh, tactical nukes here. Some people were PvPing with Alhaitham, and then people started PvPing with your Keqing run. Yeah, so C0 Alhaitham, surely. C0 Alhaitham run. C1 for Furina, C2 Nahida, but the PvP was like the Alhaitham's like the second best DPS in the game or whatever, but the clear time was the same as C0 Keqing, who's supposed to be mid. He's still nice for casual players, but if you ever tried some sort of speedrun at all, it's not fun unless you play Nidu. So yeah, is this the same investment Keqing getting the same clear time? And they did it bookless as well. C2 Nahida. Yeah, the other run had C2 Nahida as well. But it had C2 Nahida, C1 Furina. Nice. This is it's a very nicely optimized. C0, Misplitter. It doesn't have Thundering Fury, but Thundering Fury is not even really for damage anyway. It's not a huge upgrade. TF is a fake set. Yeah, it's just not that good. Its best use case is Keqing, but even then, it makes her feel more fun to play, but it's not really more damage than something else. Freedom Sword, C0 kazuha, 5, 6, 7. It's 7 costs. They're both 7 costs, basically. You know what's the real Giga Chad here? Can you guys see it on the left of the screen? The real Giga Chad here is the power crept cryo character, clearing both of them with less cost. Let's go. I think this is C0 Shenhe, C0 Ayaka. It just shows that you can use whatever you want if you know how to play them. So if you don't know how to play a character, then they're all gonna suck. If you do, well, apart from Neuvillette, you can't suck playing Neuvillette. But yeah, for most characters, you can learn how to play all of them, and you can get good results.
Because of that, I was unable to get proper rotation, so you can see why it's important that you don't mess that up.
Yeah, but it's fine. I mean, I don't think Jello doesn't claim to be like good at the game. It's just supposed to be relatable gameplay, which is fine.
We still clear.
He plays on controller.
You don't need to pull Alhaitham to make these teams. He doesn't unlock. I mean, he unlocks spread, so there's value in that, but he doesn't unlock Hyperbloom as a core. It's Nahida and Kuki that unlock Hyperbloom as a core. And I did also want to say you can run Alhaitham with Nilu as well. It's not really optimal for either of them, but it's definitely still good.
Can you elaborate? I think I talked about it in one of my videos. He was actually pretty good with Nilu. It's not Nilu's strongest teams, but like something like this was actually Alhaitham's best teams. Because what happened is that the Nilu teams with Alhaitham are basically like the Hyperbloom teams, but they actually have AoE. And there's less downtime. Yeah, if you want to bench, so there's been people who have come into the stream and said they're bored of Nahida, but yeah, then we showed them Bloom and then they found it a lot of fun. Keqing is stronger, not really. I would say for most casual players, they're better off playing Hyperbloom than Keqing teams. So basically, instead of getting the second dendro character like Kibara, you get TTDS instead of the dendro resonance. Yeah, that was the Jello impact video. It's a cool video. I mean, my thing is with Alhaitham, I feel like he's gonna go down the road of other characters where it will be very sudden. Like at the moment, he's like super bat-chested, super hyped up, and then you guys wait for it. All of a sudden, just in the space of like one patch, people will just consider him mid. Like the same thing happened with Ayaka. Like Ayaka was hyped up so much, and then all of a sudden, people would just say she's mid. Yeah, it happened with Zila as well in Star Rail. All of a sudden, people say she's mid. Probably like Dunhong as well. Like all of a sudden, people would just say, "Ah, actually, he's not actually that good."